Good evening. So last Monday, the biggest opposition party, the National Democratic Congress, launched the much anticipated People's Manifesto. The manifesto has been touted as a document that reflects the aspirations of the people of Ghana. A bottom-up approach, they call it. Our political desk team, headed by Evans Mensah, has counted 617 promises. Very loaded manifesto. Is it a solutions manifesto or a desperate sugar-coated manifesto just to entice you for your vote? The NDC is promising to pay assembly members, a promise that could be traced in the 2012, 2016 and now the 2020 manifesto. The big question is, why hasn't this promise been fulfilled? What shows that this promise will be fulfilled this time round? Primary or free primary health care, $10 billion for infrastructure. They've tagged it the big push. Then the legalization of the Okada, that's a popular one. We'll be touching base with a number of groups who will be sharing their informed opinions on the NDC's manifesto, the People's Manifesto. Now, this is the Joy News channel. It is free to air on your DTT platforms on DSTV channel 421 and GoTV channel 144. We are live as well. And if you must leave the television set at any point in time, you can catch the program live on MyJoyOnline.com or our social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We have it all covered. And then at the top of the hour 8, our Joy FM listeners will join us on 99.7 FM together with affiliates across the country. At this point, we'll take a look at the COVID-19 updates as a nation. So that's where we stand when it comes to COVID-19. Our new cases, 46. Our active cases are at 806. Our recoveries and discharges, 44,342. Our death toll is 286. Our confirmed cases are at 45,434. That's our national figure, 45,434. So with that out of the way, that's our COVID-19 update as a nation, just 46 new cases. But you need to continue to adhere to the safety protocols. COVID-19 is real. After this short break, I'll introduce to you my guest, Sami Jemfi, lawyer Sami Jemfi, is a communications officer of the NDC. Much later also, Kojo Poku, an energy analyst, will also be joining us with their thought. Gabriel Benaku is with a coalition of NGOs in health. He will pick their thoughts as well. And then, of course, the president of NAGRAT, Angel Eric Kabonu, will also be joining us. Edem Senanu is looking at the corruption, anti-corruption fight of the NDC, citizens movement against corruption. And, of course, our very own head of our Joy News, our Greek and Science and Technology desk, Joseph Opoku Gakbo, will also join us. Your questions are also welcome at this point. I am MFA Pau. Thanks for your company. Welcome once again. This is the lockdown on the Joy News channel. Thanks so much for your company. And it promises to be an exciting one tonight, looking at the lineup we have. And in the studio with me is Mr. Sami Jemfi, the communications officer of the NDC. Thank you so much for your company here on the lockdown. We're locking you down tonight. Are you ready? You're ready to be locked down? Okay. So we'll bring in the other analysts as we go on. I've introduced them to you. We'll have Kojo Poku, who is an energy analyst. We'll have Gabriel Benaku, who is with the NGOs in health, coalition of NGOs in health. We'll have my own colleague, Joseph Opoku Gakbo. He's the head of our Joy News, Greek Science and Tech desk. We'll also have Angel Kabonu, who is the president of NAGRAT. We'll get their thoughts shortly, and then we'll have them leave us via Zoom. But I'll start with you, Mr. Sami Jemfi. Well, our head of desk, political desk, and the team, they've been counting up to what, 617 promises. Have you been counting? How many promises are there in the People's Manifesto? I
have not counted the number of promises, but I think that it is a commendable and a productive exercise for the media to help track the promises that political parties make. I think that it helps to deepen the culture of transparency and accountability that we are all trying to promote in our democratic experiment. But one thing is for sure, President Mahama is honest, he's trustworthy, and when given the opportunity on the 7th of December 2020, with the help of God and the people of this country, he will implement all the transformational policies and programs that we have captured in the People's Manifesto. The reason why we have that confidence that these promises are realizable and will be achieved under the next NDC Mahama government with the help of God is that these are realistic and doable policies and programs which emanated from the people of this country. And that is what makes this manifesto unique and one of a kind, because it is the first manifesto ever to be produced by a political party in this country through the kind of open, broad, bottom-up consultative process that the writing of the People's Manifesto went through all these months. And so it reflects the needs and aspirations of Ghanaians of all walks of life. And that is why, since it was launched last Monday, it has received acclaim and warm reception nationwide.
That's the kind of feedback you're receiving.
Exactly. Because
but
it resonates
that you
with
have,
the people of this country,
it's 600
and it addresses their needs and
I'll come to
yes.
the feedback. Of course, we'll have a lot of time because of the questions that are coming in. It's all on the manifesto, so you get a lot of time to talk about it. But knowing that you have criticized your opponents, for instance, for the number of promises that they've put out there, you're still criticizing because you say they are not achievable, they are not realistic. Most of them you say they have not achieved. And then you are putting out 617 promises, and you think that you're not just throwing them out there for people to just vote for the NDC, or because the people said you should put it there, so you have put it there.
I don't think that we have criticized the MPP for the number of promises they made. It's not an issue of numbers. It's an issue of whether or not they have lived up to their promises, whether or not they have fulfilled their promises. Did
you follow that press conference held by Mr. Samuel Kujeto, for instance?
It was organized.
It was organized. Voluminous and all.
No, it was organized under the auspices of the National Communications Bureau.
Of course.
At our third weekly press briefing.
So you know that very well.
I'm very much conversant with that. And we described manifestos since 1992 by the two major parties, the MPP and the NDC. But the main crux, or gravamen of that exercise was to assess whether or not this government has been able to fulfill the numerous lofty promises they made to the people of this country on the basis of which they were elected. And as we demonstrated with indisputable fact that day, over 86% of the 631 promises they made in their 2016 manifesto still remain unfulfilled. And they include promises like one district, one hospital, one district, one market, one region, one theater, one village, one dam, one district, one factory, $1 million per constituency. We will transform Nima into Villaggio. Accra will be the cleanest city in Africa, and so on. You have a promise to transform Nima market as well, also in this manifesto. But it's interesting that you know the number of promises that your opponents put out there, 631, yet you do not know how many promises you have put out in the People's Manifesto. Like I said, I've not counted the promises one by one yet. The manifesto is just 1 week old. But we will, like I said, we commend you for engaging in that exercise. It is productive. It will help deepen transparency and accountability, because when elected, we would like the people and the media, who are the fourth estate of the realm, to hold us accountable, for the promises we made. And so we will also do our own count, and I'll speak to the chairperson of the manifesto committee and those who worked on it, and see whether we can corroborate the number that we have put out. The number that we have put out. So maybe it could be more, but at least we've counted 617. We will check on that. But MFA, the most important thing, like I said, is whether or not President Mahama and the NDC can be trusted to deliver. You see, there is one thing you cannot take away from His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. He exudes trust and honesty seamlessly, because that is who he is. When he promises, he delivers. And so these promises which emanated, or let me say policies and programs which emanated from the people themselves, we are optimistic and confident that with the help of God and with the help of the people, we are going to implement that to achieve the socio-economic transformation that we are all yearning for. And if we go into the details, I'm going to explain to you how we intend to achieve these policies and programs. So the main concern, at least for some of us, is the fact that
the promises that you've made and then the 25 freebies and all, the former president had mentioned himself that they will be taking over an economy that will be in tatters, at least listening to him on Monday. So he may be trustworthy and all, but how is he hoping? It looks like this manifesto was put together without the post-COVID or the pandemic that we are currently in mind. It looks like that did not happen. How are we hoping to fund all this?
No, on the contrary, this manifesto was put together within the context of the COVID situation we have on our hands and what the situation will be in the next 4 years. And that is why the manifesto starts with COVID-19. Even before we begin to talk about fixing the economy, we talk about the COVID-19 situation in this country and how we would have dealt with it differently and how we seek to deal with it differently when given the opportunity. So we are not oblivious of the challenges that the nation currently finds itself in as a result of the COVID-19 situation we have on our hands. But you see, the NDC, if you look at our tradition, we have that reputation of turning around difficult situations, you know, and solving difficult problems.
Is it a magic wand? Because of the reality. The reality.
We have that ingenuity and creativity. I'll give you a typical example. Look at Dumso. This is a problem that transcends governments. It has confronted governments since the 1980s.
You were worse hit.
We were worse hit by that, but we tackled it head on, ensure that we ramped up generational capacity, energy power generational capacity from about 1,800 megawatts to over 5,000 megawatts, such that today we have energy, you know, excess power.
The excess that is piling up our energy sector debts.
What the government is telling you is not wholly true, and we can have that discussion on another day, but it is not true at all. So we ensure that we had excess power, we had more than enough, we dealt with the legacy, you know, debts which were crippling the energy sector through the introduction of ESLA, which was another product of our ingenuity and creativity. We strengthened state-owned enterprises in the power sector. When we were in office, for example, ECG was making profit and so on and so forth. So we dealt with that problem. Even the issue of fuel was addressed by us through the Atuabo, you know, the Ghana Gas Company investment of over $1 billion, which has ensured that today we process gas in this country and save this country over 300 million Ghana cedis. So all these initiatives we took created a situation where at the time we were exiting office in January 2017, we had dealt with that long-standing problem of Dumso, or if you like, power deficit. I can say the same thing about the economy we met in the 1980s, specifically the 1981, when the PNDC took over the realms of this administration. That was a time that the inflation was hovering around 120. Growth was in the negatives and all that. We found ourselves in a difficult situation. And yet through the innovative economic policies that we embarked upon under the leadership of Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings at the time, we transformed this country and did a lot for this country. So we've done it before and we can do it again. And that is why, for example, if you look at this manifesto, we are proposing policies to mitigate the socioeconomic effect of COVID-19 on the people. That is what has led, for example, to the Chimpe promise, which is a promise to absorb 50% of the school fees of all students in our public tertiary institutions, made up of universities, colleges of education, nursing training institutions, students in our technical universities and all that, because we understand and appreciate the fact that COVID-19 has had a debilitating effect on livelihoods and the businesses
and on our economy as well. So where is that money coming from?
We have explained clearly how we intend to fund these policies. But if you will allow me just run you through a few highlights of the manifesto, then we can
I'm sure that
deal with the issue holistically. The issue of funding,
I see the number of questions on that, so it will come up. Yeah. But let's not keep our guests who are also joining us waiting for too long. You will have all the time, you know that, right? Okay. So let's just bring them in. They will give us just their thoughts on what they've read so far regarding the key sectors. So I see that we have Mr. Kabonu also joining us, Edem Senanu will also join us, and then we'll have also my colleague Joseph Opoku-Gakpo Darkbo, and then of course Gabriel Benaku also joining us. But let's go Vazu now. Mr. Kabonu, we'll start with you because there are a number of key issues when it comes to education as well. I see teacher motivation on page 69, for instance. You were getting some tablets and laptops and all. We'll get into it. But let's hear your thoughts, what you've seen when it comes to education. I had the opportunity to speak to you on the NPP's manifesto. You've looked at this one also. What are your initial thoughts?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now, Mr.?
Hello?
Okay, so I'll come back. I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you, Mr. Kabonu. It appears we have a technical challenge there. We'll get back to Mr. Kabonu and my other guests via Zoom to pick their initial thoughts on this, and then we can let them go, and then we'll get into the first batch of questions at this point. So if you may, I will just allow you a few minutes so that you can wrap up your initial comments, then we can get into the questions.
Just a few highlights. President Mahama has indicated that the main plank of his second coming is jobs, jobs, jobs. And that is why the theme of the People's Manifesto is jobs and prosperity for all. And so if you look at the manifesto, we have this policy that we have christened Ejumapa. What Ejumapa simply means is that under the next NDC Mahama government, we will create a minimum of 1 million sustainable permanent jobs with decent wages. So we are talking about permanent jobs and not ad hoc jobs. And we are talking about jobs which come with decent wages.
What kinds of permanent jobs are we talking about?
We are talking about private sector jobs, public sector jobs, and jobs
so you're doing
the national
this, you're doing this in partnership with the private sector.
So there are private sector jobs. For example, if you look at the big push policy, which is a $10 billion investment in infrastructure, we are projecting, based on the analysis we have done, that every year we will create a minimum of 90,000 jobs within that broad spectrum. And these jobs will go to indigents, local people, because as you may be aware, only local contractors, architects, artisans, and materials will be used under the big push, policy as an incentive to strengthen indigenous businesses in this country, to promote indigenous businesses. Under agriculture and agribusinesses, we are projecting to create over 35,000 jobs in 2021 alone. Light manufacturing, that is apparels, accessories, good processing, 30,000 jobs. In the pharmaceuticals industry, 21,000 jobs. Tree crops, that is shea, cashew, cocoa, palm, and rubber, 11,000 jobs. Furniture and furnishings, 10,400. Waste management and sanitation, 10,000. The tourism sector, 9,000. Financial services, 8,000, and all that. We have total that I can share this document with you.
And these are your projections
in
based
the private
on the
sector
current
alone.
situation?
In the private sector alone, we are projecting to create a minimum of 255,000 within our first year. And so we are not just putting out figures. It is not just about cheap sloganeering, as some do. We have done the analysis and we know where the jobs will come from and how to create the jobs. In the public sector, we have done what is called HR gap analysis to identify vacancies in the public sector that we need to fill in conformity with international standards.
Where are these vacancies?
So, for example, in the Ghana Police Service, we have identified 35,020 vacancies.
The same police service that you're complaining that they were being packed with foot soldiers, for instance.
We've never said that the police has employed people to its optimum capacity. If you look at this news article here from Ghana Business News, it says Ghana Police Service seriously understaffed, Minister, and this story is dated August 2020. So there is a huge gap in there. You know why? Because per the UN internationally acceptable standards, we are supposed to have a ratio of 1 policeman is to 500 citizens. Currently, our ratio stands around 1 policeman is to 808 citizens. And so there is a gap to be filled, and we intend to do that. In the Ghana Education Service, for example, if you check the MIS data, we have a gap of over 98,650. And here we are talking about staff, teachers, and all that we are committed to filling. In the Ghana Health Service, we have identified over 76,795 gaps. Same for the Ghana Fire Service, 30,136. Ghana Immigration Service, 3,522. Ghana Prison Service, 7,925, and so on. In total, you put regional IT hubs, NCC, the local government service, everything together, we have identified through this HR gap analysis that His Excellency President Mahama commissioned us to do, vacancies for over 367,000 in the public sector. And we are committed to filling these gaps as we grow the economy.
And you have plans for NAPCO?
NAPCO, we have indicated that we are going to bring permanence to NAPCO.
Okay.
You know, when they were engaged for a period of 3 years, and that 3 years is supposed to lapse this year. Government, seeing elections approaching and looking for votes, has decided to extend their contract for another 6 months. What His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is saying is that he doesn't believe in ad hoc jobs. He appreciates the fact that unemployment is a big problem. As a matter of fact, a security threat to this nation. Okay. And so what he will do is that he will make all NAPCO beneficiaries permanent. Those who require further training will be trained and progressively integrated into the public sector through this HR gap analysis that I've explained. But more finally on jobs, we've also spoken about skill development, which has to do with a national apprenticeship program, under which any Ghanaian, young or old, literate or illiterate, desirous of learning a craft, will be enrolled onto that program for free.
For free.
Trained. And during the training, government will ensure that every month we support them with stipends, you know, for their feeding, their transportation, so that they can really learn. And when they pass out, we are going to give them certificates and set them up with the necessary toolkits so that they can open their businesses and employ others. These are but a few of the measures that we have aligned in the People's Manifesto to address the problem of high unemployment confronting this nation, which, in our opinion, is a time bomb that we are sitting on, and that is why President Mahama is so passionate about that.
Okay, so but a quick correction, though. You earlier mentioned that one police officer, according to the UN recommendations, is to one police officer to 500 is actually 450. I'm just checking.
So it means that our situation is even worse.
Okay, so we'll continue
we currently stand at one policeman is to about 800.
Okay, so that's just a quick correction. Let's go via Zoom now at this point. I'm sure that Mr. Angel Kabonu, Edem Senanu, and then Dr. Gabriel Benako, and then of course Joseph Hokogepo can hear us now at this point. Let's look at some of the key sectors, then we can get into the number of questions that we've received. Mr. Kabonu, I'll start with you because education is key at this point. So I was asking earlier what your initial thoughts are on what you've seen and heard from the NDC in terms of this People Manifesto that they've put out.
Well, I'd like to make some preliminary statements that maybe every Ghanaian should consider making analysis of the various manifestos. One thing that I'd like to talk about is we should be very watchful of the level of revenue mobilization that we are able to harness internally within this country, and see whether there is a direct relationship between the revenue mobilization that we do in this country and the promises that is being made by the various political parties. For example, as we speak, the public sector consumes. Can you hear me, Nafa?
I can hear you loud and clear, Mr. Kabonu.
Okay, so as we speak, the public sector wages, salaries, and compensation consume a huge chunk of internally generated revenue. Ghana is making about 30% revenue mobilization annually. So if all promises are made in various manifestos, there is a need for us to ask the various political parties what strategy they have to be able to mobilize revenue internally to be able to support the promises that they are making in their various manifestos. So that is a general statement that I would like to make before I come to the specific issues of education. Now, when you look at education, when the New Patriotic Party was in opposition and promised free senior high school, the teacher unions took a different position, whereas we welcome the idea, the philosophy of giving education to people because they cannot afford it. We knew historically the difficulties and challenges that governments have had in ensuring that adequate revenues go to the schools and go to the schools timeously. So we opted for the idea that it would be more prudent if the government will embark on a free senior high school that will target needy parents, those who are challenged, and allow those who are blessed with the resources to be able to pay. So those will free up resources so the government can even put those resources to different parts of education. Unfortunately, the position of Margaret did not hold sway, but we are all seeing the challenges that we are seeing. Now then, NDC is promised that they are going to even expand the frontiers
to cover private in deprived areas.
In deprived areas. That is private schools in deprived areas. Right. What it also means is that more resources are supposed to be mobilized to those institutions also. The question we want to ask ourselves, have we been satisfied the needs and wants of the public schools, let alone extending some of these resources to the private schools in deprived areas? So that is something that we are a little bit apprehensive about, and we want a little bit detailed explanation to understand the workability and the sustainability of that promise made by the NDC. Again, we also want clarity to do with the payment of school fees of the tertiary institutions. Are they 50%. Going to pay 50% pro rata, or the 50% is for only 1 year, or the 50% is to a stated amount of money? We want clarity in that area also.
Okay.
I'll pause for now to get these answers.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Angel Kabonu. I would want to go to Mr. Kojo Poku as well. Let's box energy and then education together. Then we can get answers to it. The number of questions about VSHS and then the 50% that you're hoping to pay for tertiary students. Mr. Kojo Poku, if you're ready, I don't know if we have Mr. Kojo Poku also on standby.
Yes,
okay, so Mr. Kojo Poku, I've been looking at energy as well. You don't have too much to look at, just about 2 pages or so. But what stands out for you looking at the People's Manifesto and energy is on page 40, and then also
for me, unfortunately, not much stands out. I have gone through that manifesto, and I think there's a very big missed opportunity in that manifesto. If we all remember correctly, there is this PDS saga, which is what some of us call private sector participation in the electricity generation.
Yeah.
It is something that was started by the NDC, and the MPP came to continue it, and we all know how it all ended. Some of us were very eager to see that if the NDC would include the private sector participation in their manifesto, and it looked like they did not. And most of the challenges in this country, Mr. Sami Gyamfi talked about doomsaw in their era. Most of the challenges in the country today, if that private sector participation is not brought back, we are going to end up back in that doomsaw again, because we need sanitation in the generation, in the distribution, because there are a lot of discussion, a lot of proposals, and a lot on the table to be done. But it looks like the NDC did not put private sector participation in their manifesto. So it goes to tell me that if that is to go by, they don't believe in the private sector participation, which they did not put. Now, secondly, I can see the good thing they are trying to do, which is in Europe, residential pay more, and industry pay less. So if you read the manifesto, they tell you that they are trying to allocate the cheaper generation, which is the hydro, Akosombo, to industry. So if they do that, what that means is that they are going to give the cheaper fuel to industry, so industry will pay less. What that means is that households will have to pay more. Now, they talk a lot of increasing renewable, increasing mini hydros. All those are new capital injection, new infrastructure, which will bring on board a lot of capital expenditure. What that means is that it will make the generation basket a lot more expensive. Now, what is missing is nothing is said about increasing of electricity. If you take the cheaper generation and give it to industry, what it fundamentally means is that residentials have to pay more for electricity. Well, Mr. Sami Gyamfi admits that they will have to increase electricity to be able to achieve what they are trying to do. Now, maybe the debt of this country doesn't mean anything anymore. If that's the case, and everybody thinks that we are going to borrow to the hill and finance anything we want to help with the future of this country, then yes, we can all go to bed and say that, yes, everybody can do whatever they think they want to do. But if we want to now do things within prudence, if we want to do things within what this country can afford, then clearly we need to be able to say things within our confines, with the confines being matching our revenue to our expenditure. So if they want to now be able to do some of the things they want to do, one of the things they would do is to have to increase electricity. Now, if they tell us that they are going to increase electricity, but be able to achieve all the things they want to achieve, someone like me, I'll support that, because I think we need to have prudent approaches. There's no point promising me the world when you can't afford it. So if you tell me you're going to give me good, efficient electricity, you're going to expand renewables, you're going to give cheaper fuel to industries, but Ghanaians will have to pay more. Be honest with us. We will accept it and we will support you. I think I will leave that and let him answer the question on if they can achieve this. If they are going to borrow to support that, then that's fine. I mean, and nobody will have an argument with, look, we are going to borrow 20, 30 billion and we don't care what happens in the future, then that's fine. There's no argument. But if they think they need to have a sustainable industry where they match revenue to expenditure, then they will have to increase electricity.
Mr. Kojopoku, we're grateful. We'll leave it here. Mr. Sami Jenfi will take these two questions for now. I'm sure Mr. Gabriel Benako and the rest are also itching to ask you their questions. But let's deal with the first two that have come in, issues about education. So Nagrat is asking about the workability and sustainability. You're hoping to expand the free SHS to cover the private sector deprived, those in the deprived and underserved areas. The workability and sustainability are issues for him. And then also the 50% that you're going to pay for tertiary. Is it a pro rata? Is it a 1 year, or is it on a stated amount? What exactly is it?
Okay, so let me start with the Chimpe promise. That is how we've christened it.
Okay.
The promise to absorb 50% of the fees of all students in our public tertiary institutions. We didn't just make that promise for votes. We've done the analysis. We know how much it's going to cost, and we know how we are going to fund it.
How much is it costing?
The promise, actually, first of all, let me explain what the promise is to absorb the 50% of the school fees of students in public tertiary institutions for the 2020-2021 academic year.
So it's just for 1 year? Is it just for 1 year?
For 1 year.
Okay.
For 1 year.
So that question is answered.
Beyond 1 year, we are introducing reforms, to ensure that we cushion the students against the high cost of tertiary education and make tertiary education affordable. And here I'm talking about reforms relative to the student loan trust fund. That is why, for example, we have said that under the next NDC Mahama government, any student who gets admission can use his admission letter to guarantee for a student loan to pay his or her admission fees and school fees even before he goes to school. You understand? That is why, for example, we have said that we will increase the student loan amount from 1,600 to an amount commensurate with economic conditions in the country. If the student loan
facility will also be available, then why are you taking that cost for just 1 year, and then you now introduce reforms for them to continue paying for the rest?
It's part of our post-COVID alleviation program to mitigate the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19
on the tertiary students?
On tertiary students. Because affordability at the secondary level, at least for public institutions, is not a problem. I'll address the issue of the private institutions. So for the tertiary institution, for the first year, this is what we are doing for you. Okay, but beyond that, we are still mindful of affordability. That is why if you look at the educational section,
so it's not on a stated amount.
We are talking about
the entire
accessible, quality, and affordable education for all Ghanaian children. And so the new reforms that we are introducing to the student loan trust fund will also ensure that even after the first year, after this 50% reduction in school fees for students in public tertiary institutions for 2020-2021 academic year, students can access higher student loans under better conditions, where you will not be the requirement of a guarantor will no longer be a requirement, and where you'll be required to pay not when you leave school, but when you get a job. Okay. And also, where even before you get admission, you can leverage your admission letter and access a student loan under the student loan plus scheme that will be introduced. And so that is about that. And we've done the analysis. If you look at the total number of students in our public tertiary institutions for 2018-2019 academic year, the data we have from the GES shows that we have over 418,619 students.
Okay.
So roughly 400,000.
400,000.
Now, averagely, now 90% of these students are regular students. Averagely, their school fees hovers around 1,500, 2,000 Ghana cedis. Okay. If you add the postgraduates who pay a little higher, averagely still you have something within the region of 2,000 cedis. And so if you multiply by that figure by this number, you get something in the region of 800, 900 million Ghana cedis for the 50% reduction in school fees for the 2020-2021 academic year. And so we've done the calculation. We know how much it is going to cost, and we know that we'll be
and this one is also coming from, so this over 800 million that you're going to be paying for the first year.
Not 800 million, we are paying 50%
50% of that.
50% of that is around 400 million.
Okay, okay. And where is that one also coming from? Where is this money coming from?
You see, I need to deal with the issue, the funding, the sources of the funding holistically, but I just needed to explain that promise. So it is for 1 year, 2020-2021 academic year, and it's for all students in all public tertiary institutions. And we know the numbers. I will deal with the issue.
So we have a number of questions, so we need to speed up with the answering so we can get more questions.
Then on free SHS, we have
workability, sustainability.
We have a self-inflicted problem, and I'm most grateful to Mr. Kabono, you know, when he made a point that if government had listened to some of the suggestions they made at the time free SHS was being implemented by the Akufo-Addo government, we would have avoided challenges like double track and other challenges bedeviling up.
Like he also has concerns with the new promise you are putting out.
The difference between us and the NPP is
have you listened to them?
We listen. And that is why we met teacher groups and all that during the drafting of the People's Manifesto.
And they proposed this?
Of course, it was part of that. What we are saying is that we have a self-inflicted problem of double track that we need to resolve. That double track problem is as a result of an infrastructural deficit at the secondary school level that we need to deal with. There are over 430 private secondary schools in this country which have been left to rot. Some of them are operating, you know, far below half capacity as we speak. Most of them are collapsing, they are laying off workers and all that. And yet, what led to the double track problem was an infrastructural deficit for just about 181,000 students for the 2018-2019 academic year. What we are saying is that we will harness these facilities by including this private school in the scope of the free SHS program. That at least gives you 150,000 spaces, you understand? Apart from that, we will embark on an emergency infrastructure drive by completing all abandoned E-blocks. Because if this Akufo-Addo government had completed the over 80 E-blocks, you know, we completed and handed over about 46 to them. There were about 80 at different levels of completion. If they had completed these schools, double track would not have arisen. And so we are going to complete these schools and expand infrastructure in existing secondary schools. So it is a three-pronged approach. And this is something we have done before. You know that we abolished the shift system at the basic level. We also, when we're confronted with the problem of, you know, when President Kufuor increased the duration of secondary education from 3 years to 4 years, we came into office in 2009. The third-year students were about to graduate to fourth year. There was no school blocks which had been provided to absorb them. We are just 1 year. We did the same thing we are promising to do now, and backed on an emergency infrastructure drive, expanded facilities in existing schools, and avoided a double track situation. That is exactly what we will do relative to the challenges bedeviling the free SHS program, because we intend to continue and sustain it. Not just that, we also intend to make TVETs both at the secondary level and at the tertiary level free. And by that, what we mean is that currently just about 50 secondary TVET institutions are covered under free SHS. Those MVTI, those under the Ministry of Labour are not covered. Those in our technical universities are not covered. We are going to ensure that any Ghanaian pursuing a technical and vocational course at the secondary level and at the tertiary level, here we are talking about technical universities, formerly polytechnics, will go to school for free. Because that is part of the development of our human resource base to deal with the big problem of unemployment.
Okay, so you've attempted answering the questions of Nagrat. I'm sure that.
And I really appreciate Mr. Kabuno for these questions.
For these questions. Okay, so let's go on to Mr. Kojopoku's questions. You
yes,
have to be really fast on some of these answers so we can take more.
First of all, let me make the point that he's right that we did not capture PDS and the private sector participation concessionaire arrangement for ECG in the manifesto. That is because that if you are drafting a manifesto and you want to capture everything in there, the world will not be in.
And this is something you've held a number of press conferences on.
President Mahama has already spoken about PDS and what he intends to do about the ECG concessionaire arrangement. He has said, for example, that we are going to ensure that we investigate that stinking scandal, make sure that those who have misappropriated funds account for same. And he has also indicated that the NDC is committed to the PSP concessionaire arrangement for ECG. We started it. Everything was going on smoothly before President Akufo-Addo came in, changed the percentage arrangement, decided to give 51% to his friends and cronies, some of whom were owners of barbering shops. At the end of the day, we found out that the insurance guarantee on the basis of which we gave them that important national asset was even fraudulent. They've collected monies from us in the form of electricity tariffs that they are yet to account for. We are going to investigate that, and we're going to ensure that we pursue that PSP
that point has been made. But
secondly,
issues about increasing electricity.
I mean, there is no indication in this manifesto that we'll be increasing electricity. What we have said here, and I'll just read it because it is self-explanatory,
and that's
is that we will prioritize cheaper hydropower for heavy industries to create jobs and vulnerable homes. That is social safety nets, and use the rest to further lower average thermal tariffs. So this policy is rather about reducing the cost of tariffs, not just for businesses, like he accurately said, but also for vulnerable homes and for lower people within the lower average, income bracket. We have also said here that we will provide tax and other incentives to encourage thermal generators to lower tariffs. So we are looking at lowering tariffs.
The first part, for instance, steadily expand mini hydro, thermal and renewable power generation to match growth in demand, especially for heavy industries such as aluminium, iron and steel smelting, and for export. There, his concern is, it means that we are going to be paying more.
No, you are not going to be paying more because we have another section on reliability and affordability of power. We have a program for affordability of power, and that program is simple. We have thermal generators of power. The cost of thermal energy is expensive. If you want to make it cheaper, it means that you must be ready to give them incentives to bring down their cost of operation. And that is why we have indicated a clear commitment to give them incentives that will bring down the cost of their tariffs. We have also spoken about, prioritizing cheaper sources of power, like hydro, so that industries will be fed with power from those hydro plants, And also, Ghanaians, vulnerable homes, those within the lower average thermal, income brackets, lower income brackets, will also be given power from this. And so what we are proposing is a mix of power from hydro and thermal and gas, you understand, and ensure that at the end of the day we deploy this in a way that reduces the cost of power for businesses and industry, and at the same time reduces the cost of power for the ordinary Ghanaian. And we have clearly explained that here.
Okay, Mr. Kojopoku, this is a technical area, so I'll need you back on that. You're satisfied with the responses that you've gotten from Mr. Sammy JV to the questions that you posed? Quickly.
Well, no, he did not answer my question. And like I clearly stated, if he's going to give incentive to the thermal generators to reduce electricity, it means government is going to get less revenue. It boils down to what comes into government coffers. As we stand now, we all know the problem within the sector. There's huge indebtedness. GEMCOs are owed a lot of money. They are coming in, they are saying that they're going to create reliable power. It means you have to pay what is owed. If you now are saying that you're going to give tax incentive, it means you're going to get less money coming into the government coffers. My point is that all the things that NDC is saying is money going out. How are you going to balance that with money coming in? Where are you going to get the money coming in?
Okay. Mr. Kojo-Poku, thank you so much. So, money going out, how are you dealing with money coming in?
You see, that is for the want of a better word, a short-sighted way of looking at revenue mobilization.
Is it?
When you provide tax incentives to power generators or businesses, like I'm going to explain the tax cards that we are providing, you know, small-scale enterprises, medium-scale enterprises and all that, immediately, in the interim, you are going to see a decline in revenue. But as these businesses expand, as they increase their economic activity, as they employ more people, you increase your tax base. You are able to tax more and maximize revenue mobilization. Because there is an agenda behind the reduction of taxes. What we are trying to do is that we are trying to reduce the cost of business, the cost of doing business, the cost of operation, so that businesses can produce at a cheaper rate, they can employ more. As they employ more, as they produce more, you can rake in more revenue from that by employing advanced technological means, expanding the tax net, ensuring strict compliance to tax measures and all that. You don't necessarily have to increase taxes and overburden the fewer people paying taxes all the time as a means of generating revenue. That is what we have done since 1992, and it hasn't worked. And what we need to do now, and that is why, for example, President Mahama is saying that when under the next NDC Mahama government, small-scale businesses will be exempted entirely from the payment of corporate income tax. We have also said that medium-scale enterprises will also be given a reduction from 25% to 15%, and newly incorporated medium-scale enterprises employing 20 people and above will be given, will not pay corporate income taxes for their first 2 years. Yes, we are going to lose revenue as a result of that in the interim, if you look at it that way. But over a period of time, these businesses will be able to plow back those taxes into their businesses, expand, employ more people, pay more income taxes. Their employees will pay more income taxes. And so these are the innovative ways of enhancing revenue mobilization without unnecessarily overburdening the Ghanaian taxpayer in the formal sector like we have done since 1992. So I appreciate the concern my brother is raising. But we have a choice to make, whether to go the business as usual way, continue to tax, or to give businesses some reprieve for at least the first, second year, so that after these businesses are well, established, they are expanding, employing people, you can tax them forever and make the more revenue than what you lost in the first or second year when you decided to give them those tax waivers. And that is why, again, finally on this point, we have indicated that under the next NDC Mahama government, all commercial vehicles, all vehicles and equipment imported into this country for agriculture and industrial purposes or commercial purposes will not attract import duty. We recognize the role that these players are contributing or are playing to nation building. Most of the times when they bring in equipment and vehicles, we slap astronomical import duty on these vehicles. Some of them are not able to pay, and we end up auctioning these vehicles at a pittance to politicians and their cronies. That is unfair, that is unjust, that is not how you build a country. And so we are going to say, what we are saying is that in line with our overarching vision of creating jobs, and for that matter, creating an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive, if you bring in a commercial vehicle, a vehicle for industrial or agricultural purpose, under the next NDC Mahama government, inshallah, you are not going to pay any import duties. It's part of the incentives we are providing business. Okay, so I have a lot of questions. This is the lockdown here on the JoyNews channel, and I'll get into your questions shortly. I beg your pardon. I'll get into your questions shortly. But let me bring in my colleague, Joseph Opoku. The funding issue is still outstanding. Where would the money come from? Funding, you need to let me just address that once and for all. I'm sure it would answer all the other questions. Yes, so hold on to that. Don't forget, we are all interested in that. But Joseph, quickly, you have been looking at the agribusiness and then the agric, and they put it like that, they've captioned it like that in the People's Manifesto. This is the area, is the desk you had. Tell us what your thoughts are on what you've seen.
Okay, there you go. So to break the bit about agriculture and agribusiness into two, let's do first of all with the cocoa sector, because we know that's our most important cash crop, and then we can deal with the general sector. We've seen the promises that are coming from the NDC, including the fact that they would ensure that we have cocoa roads, more of that. It's an existing policy, yes, we know it. The indication again is that there will be a cocoa farmers pension scheme.
Exactly.
That's something we've been having a lot of conversation around recently. I have a very substantive question on that. And then we are being promised that for cocoa farmers, there will be an annual increment when it comes to cocoa prices. There will be a free fertilizer and other agro input for cocoa farmers. There will be additional livelihoods for cocoa farmers. And repeatedly, we've made the point that the cocoa farmer harvests cocoa twice a year, so then they would need other sources of additional livelihood. There is the promise to empower women cocoa farmers. There is the promise that there will be the local formulation and manufacture of fertilizers. And then there will be the Youth in Cocoa program, as well as the establishment of additional cocoa colleges and all. Just to sum it all up, there are two questions that come up. First of all, we've seen that thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, the price of cocoa has been falling on the world market ever since about 6 months ago. The indication is that we won't see a recovery anytime soon. The main problem has been that because of lockdowns and all, processing factories have slowed down. There was a glut in the market, resulting in the reduced cocoa prices. My question is, if farmers are being promised that there will be an annual increment when it comes to the producer price they get for their cocoa, where will the funding come from when we know that the prices of cocoa on the world market keep falling and there's no indication that there will be a change going forward? Closely tied to that, one of the surest ways of government increasing revenue from the cocoa sector in order to plow back to farming communities and all, to do all of these projects as has been outlined in the manifesto, is ensuring increased processing, because you see a lot of the cocoa we have in this country being shipped abroad. And for example, when you pick the average bar of chocolate on the markets when it comes to the UK, and you compare how much the cocoa farmer earns from it, it's just about 6%.
Okay.
So if government can ensure that the cocoa farmer would earn more from his cocoa, one sure way is to ensure that there is increased processing of cocoa, not into cocoa liquor or semi-finished products, but into chocolates and other products going forward. I don't see anything in the manifesto that addresses that. So we would want to know, what is government doing to ensure increased processing so we don't continue exporting our cocoa in each state? The third question I would have for the NDC as far as the manifesto is concerned is
quickly, Joseph.
The idea of MFA, can I go ahead?
Yes, quickly.
So the idea of free inputs was existent when the NDC was in power. There was the free fertilizer, there was the free cocoa spraying program. The reason why the NPP administration sought to change that into a situation where there will be subsidized scheme is because the claim was that the old example wasn't working, and that we're seeing a lot of situations where a lot of farmers were not benefiting. If they are reintroducing the free to replace the subsidy scheme, what is being done to ensure that all cocoa farmers will benefit from this, so that not just those who are politically connected and those who are in the books of various NEC executives at the local level?
Okay. Well, Joseph, that's the head of our Agric Science and Technology desk here at the JoyNews channel, and he has these questions. So I'll box in the coalition of NGOs in health. Dr. Gabriel Benako, I'm sorry for keeping you waiting. I know that's rude, but thank you for holding on for us. So I'll come to you also quickly, then we can box the two sectors together as well. I'm sure you have some concerns. You've been looking at health. It's under people development. They have a number of promises there as well. They're heavy on COVID. But quickly, your thoughts, and then if you have a question or two, we'll drop it in. Mr. Benako, I'm not sure you heard me the first time. So I'm saying that we're on health now. And I know you have some concerns. You've looked at their health promises they've made in that sector. What are your concerns? And if you have a question or two, you can drop them now.
Yeah, thank you. And I would like to take this opportunity to greet everybody, all the viewers, and also to thank the two major political parties for coming out with a much more content-based manifesto. And before I go ahead, I will continue to give the feedback to the two major political parties. The first one is that they need to domesticate the manifesto into regional specific.
Okay.
So that people can be much more aware of what is in it for them. I'm giving this gift to both of them. So whoever wants to take it. The second point is that our manifesto must move from English-based to the local language-based. So that the larger Ghanaians who read their mother tongue at the various churches, the various mosques, and the various locality will understand much more better. So I'm challenging the two political parties to take advantage of the laws in Ghana.
No. Mr. Benaku, it appears that I'm losing Mr. Benaku there, but let's take some free consultation that he's giving, but let's deal with the issues about cocoa.
Those are laudable suggestions. We are grateful for that. I can tell you that it is this thinking that informed the town hall meeting that we'll be holding on Tuesday in the Ashanti region, which will be in the P language on the People's Manifesto, and we'll be having similar engagements in the other regions of the country. And I can also tell you that we are currently developing a P version of the People's Manifesto, audio version. We are going to do Hausa, we are going to do Dagbani, we are going to do Ewe, we are going to do other languages as well. So laudable suggestions, we really appreciate that. But since you spoke about health, let me quickly mention that President Mahamad's superior policy alternative for ensuring that we achieve universal health coverage.
But the question has not come on health just yet.
Let me just mention, it is one of our flagship policies that I need to touch on. The free
Okay, so it appears Mr. Benaku is back. So let him just quickly finish that. Mr. Benaku, or please will you to be brief, and then you can put out your concerns, and then if you have any questions, then we can quickly take answers to them.
Yeah, largely for the last 7 years, we have given the two major political parties information that they need to put for Ghanaians. And I think that we are beginning to see some of them, and then it's much more better for the two of them. They are talking about health education, health promotion, which is part of the primary healthcare strategy, which is good, but it has to be much more smarter. They are talking about the national health insurance. The NDC is talking about amending the law. This we have talked about it over the last 6 years. When they were in government and when they are out of government, we have talked about it that we need to amend the law. So it's good that the NDC is talking about amending the law, and that's going to help. The MPP is also proposing that aspect of more infrastructure. So the two of them have seen the need for more infrastructure. So Ghanaians will decide on that. But more importantly, the NDC have talked about the national mental health, that they are going to create a fund, which is true. There has been a long time the mental health in Ghana is suffering because we do not have funding mechanism. So that is a very good input there. They also talk about the public-private partnership arrangement in the health sector. This is great because when you allow the private sector to participate in health, you are going to have a lot of burden reduced. Because it's going to be a business model. You are going to have more private people participating, and it will reduce the burden of government in some of the health sectors. And one of the critical things we notice is they are going to provide free anti-snake venom. It looks very simple, but that is very, very important. I have witnessed across the 382 NGOs that I'm leading now, who have countless of people who die because of snake bites.
Okay, so largely you are happy with what you see in the area of health in the People's Manifesto. Is that it? Do you have a question?
No, what we want to see them do, both of them, is to convert the messages to simple terms.
Okay, great. That's very well noted. Unfortunately, we don't have too much time, so we'll do this very quickly. Then we can get more questions and then get answers. We reminded that we haven't even touched on our Facebook and our WhatsApp questions, and issues about funding is also very key that we need to talk about quickly. So, funding, where is it going to come from? First, Gakpo is asking in the cocoa sector, for instance.
So first of all, I was talking about health. I was talking about free primary health care that will ensure that under the next NDC Mahama government, any Ghanaian who visits a district hospital, clinic, polyclinic, health center, or check compound will be treated for free, whether or not he or she has an NHIS
free
card.
primary health
and this
care.
is to ensure that all Ghanaians are given access to quality health care delivery, and that affordability no longer becomes a barrier.
Okay.
The health insurance scheme card will still be in existence. In fact, we are going to amend the law and make it more financially sustainable to take care of secondary and tertiary health care. So it is only when you are visiting a regional hospital or a teaching hospital that you will be required to produce your health insurance scheme card. But at the primary healthcare level, district hospital, clinic, polyclinic, and all that, you're going to access healthcare for free. Then we've spoken about the kidney and cancer disease trust fund to support people with such conditions, because it is a major problem. And affordability of the medication is a huge challenge for those suffering from those conditions. And we are committed to putting in place that kidney and cancer disease trust fund. Now, to answer the questions of your colleague on the agri sector, first of all, I can appreciate why. I thank all our colleague panelists for the feedback and their questions. The reason why he didn't see anything on agri-businesses or processing of food that we produce in this country is that he checked the agricultural sector off the manifesto. That is not captured there. And so if you check from page 40 going, you will not see that.
Okay. So
I will humbly entreat him to check page 35, where we have paragraph 6.7, where we have sector-specific strategies, policies, and programs. It is under the finance and economy chapter.
Okay.
And if you look there, there is a whole paragraph on agribusiness, agro-production and processing zones, and cocoa processing for value addition and jobs. And so you see, for example, under that, we have said that the next NDC government shall ensure the processing of at least 50% of cocoa beans locally before export. This will maximize output, value, and foreign exchange earnings, which will translate into jobs and economic growth. We've said the same thing about cashew. We've said the same thing about all the things we produce locally. And if he checks that, he will see that President Mahama has a superior.
So I see ensure the processing and marketing of finished and semi-finished cocoa products, addition to the raw cocoa
we have
beans.
all that, which will create a job. So that answers that question.
So the issue about the free fertilizer,
that when it used to be free, our friends in the MPP were accusing us of smuggling, that some of the farmers weren't getting some because the fertilizer, the free fertilizer, which we were distributing to the farmers, were being smuggled to Cote d'Ivoire and all that. I have never heard any lazy and dishonest and insensitive, alternative to a national problem like that. I have never heard anything like that. My sister, if you have a farm and you go to that farm and you realize that the thief has been there to steal your produce, will you burn the farm because the thief came to your farm to steal your food produce? Will you do that? Definitely not. What you will do is that you put mechanisms in place to ensure or to prevent thieves from coming to your farm to steal from you. We were distributing fertilizer to cocoa farmers for free. The reason why those fertilizers were being distributed for free is that we purchased those fertilizers with the cocoa farmers' own monies. We purchased those fertilizers from the cocoa syndicated loan. And that is why we inscribed on those fertilizers the inscription, strictly not for sale. If you think that some persons are smuggling that out because it is free, what you need to do is to put mechanisms in place, measures in place at our borders to check the smuggling of that. You don't say that, oh, I am cancelling that because people are smuggling it. In 2018, were you not in this country when the Minister of Agri went to Parliament and said that over 60,000 metric tons of fertilizer worth $12 million, which is 60 million Ghana cedis, under the Planting for Food and Jobs program has been smuggled out of this country. MyJoyOnline reported that story. If you Google it, you see it. Have we cancelled the distribution of subsidized fertilizer under Planting for Food and Jobs just because it's being smuggled? No.
Okay.
So we are going to check
the smuggling at the border.
And make sure that
so there's another issue, the annual increment in cocoa producer price. You know, it's been falling because of the pandemic and other factors. So he's asking where the funding will come from for this to happen.
The truth of the matter is that governments over the years, especially this MPP Akufo-Addo government, is not being honest to cocoa farmers. You see,
really?
Yes, the price of cocoa on the international market is coming down. But when you go for the cocoa syndicated loan, you secure the loan in dollars. When you bring it to the Bank of Ghana, it is given to you in cedis. So the exchange rate has a role to play in the amount of money available to cocoa board and government for the support of cocoa farmers.
In spite of the falling price on the market?
Of course, because for example, you go for $1 billion, okay, at a rate of $1 is to 4 Ghana cedis. It's not the same as going for $800 million. $800 million, yes, is lower than 1 billion. But if the rate is 6 Ghana cedis, it translates almost to the same thing or even higher. Yes, we have seen some decline in the cost of cocoa, but the exchange rate has been going up. And so when we convert it into cedis, it must translate into what we give the cocoa farmer.
So the funding is, you'll be truthful to the cocoa farmers. Is that
the price of cocoa on the international market didn't go up at all occasions. But we're paying 5 Ghana cedis bonus per cocoa bag. We're giving them free fertilizer on top of that. We're doing their rows for them and all that. This government is no longer paying the 5 Ghana cedis bonus. They have stopped the cocoa rows. They have abandoned all those rows to rot. And we are even spending more taxpayers' money on those rows which have deteriorated since the last 3.5 years and all that. And they have not increased the the price per bag of cocoa in the last 3.5 years.
Instead of us lamenting what was supposed to be done that hasn't been done, they're asking you specifically what you're going to do. Where will the funding come from for this annual increment in cocoa producer price? Where is the funding coming from?
In the history of this country, President Mahama, the Mahama administration is the government which has given cocoa farmers the highest increment in the price per bag. That is an amount of 263 Ghana cedis.
That's it.
We know how to
You are not in government now. Where are you getting the funding from?
Let me deal with the funding because it applies to almost everything we are talking about, and then I can talk about other things. You see, first of all, you must appreciate that the Ghana between 2013 and 2016, when President Mahama was in office, is not the same as the Ghana today. Our financial capacity has been enhanced as a result of the development, the discovery and development of 2 additional oil fields. Under the X1 Mahama regime, we only have the Jubilee fields, which was giving us just about 40,000 barrels of oil per day. Today, we have the 10 Sankofa fields as a result of the leadership and investments of the Mahama administration in the hydrocarbon sector. And so today, instead of 40,000 barrels of oil per day, we are getting in excess of 200,000 barrels of oil per day. We are saying that we are going to channel those resources into capital projects, infrastructural projects, and productive initiatives such as the ones I have mentioned here and I will be mentioning. That is number 1.
So oil revenue.
Number 2, we, throughout the years, have not adopted innovative and technological means of advancing tax revenue. What we have done has been to resort to tax increments all the time without plugging the holes in our revenue mobilization basket through the employment of advanced technology. We are saying that we are going to employ advanced technology to expand the tax net, ensure strict compliance to our tax laws, not by increasing taxes or introducing new taxes, but ensuring that those in the informal sector who are not paying are also paying, so that we don't overburden the few people in the formal sector. So oil
revenue, expand tax net.
All right.
These are the sources.
By employing technology. Then 3, we have spoken about the cancellation of the obnoxious capping and realignment policy. Currently, government caps every year, averagely 900 million Ghana cedis from the NHIL, which funds the National Health Insurance Scheme. They cap another 900 million from Get Fund. In 4 years, Get Fund alone is about 3.4 billion. That is what government is capping for consumption. Same for NHIS. You put that together, you get in excess of 7 billion. We are going to scrap this whole capping and realignment policy, ensure that these state agencies in the health sector, agri sector, and all that retain their IGF for productive initiatives and capital projects, and also ensure that we free these other resources for investments in health, education, and so on. Okay. Number 4, we have in the past demonstrated creative and innovative means of funding critical projects, government projects and programs, without necessarily resorting to borrowing or the imposition of new taxation. For example, when we were executing the Terminal 3 project, over $270 million, we didn't borrow. Central government didn't borrow. We didn't impose any new tax for that project. The biggest investment ever in the maritime sector, which is the Tema Port Expansion Project by MPS, which cost this nation $1.5 billion. We managed to do that without borrowing a peso or imposing any new tax.
It was a boot system.
Yes. The build, own, operate, and transfer system is the same system we use for Ameri. And this year, Ameri will become the property of Ghana. We didn't pay a dime for that. We have that record of thinking outside the box and creating schemes like the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, like the GET Fund, and all that. And so most of the projects that we will be undertaking, especially under the big push policy.
So on that big push note, we'll come back to big push. Let me make some money quickly and come back. I need money. Let me make money quickly and then I'll come back to you. Okay.
So through PPP, build, own, operate, and transfer initiatives, and similar initiatives as was used for Terminal 3, the MPS Port Expansion, Ameri, and all these projects we did under the Mahama administration without necessarily borrowing or introducing new taxes.
5 seconds gone. We'll come back. It's. I hope. I'm praying that we'll have a longer night with family. But let's go for a quick break. We'll be right back here on the lockdown. Please stay. Thanks for staying with us here on the lockdown. And my guest in the studio is the National NDC Communications Director Officer, Sammy Gyamfi. And then gone by also, we've had some inputs from some key sectors. Adam Senano will give us the final one, the final submission, then we can wrap up. I'm sure we'll get an opportunity with Sammy Gyamfi again, then we can get into the other areas. But Mr. Senano, so area of corruption and governance, you've been looking at it, satisfied with what you see? You have questions?
Well, thank you very much, Amafa. The anti-corruption, governance, and accountability section of the People's Manifesto lacks a lot of the key areas that as anti-corruption activists would be interested in. The two things, let me start out with what interested me, what excited me. There were two things. One on making single source procurement an exception rather than a rule. The challenge is that they don't tell us the how. And then there was also the idea that we're going to revert the Constitutional Review Committee report and implement it, focusing on the white paper. A number of us were not very satisfied with the white paper, so they will need to go beyond that.
Okay.
Now, let me tell you the gaps that we have questions on. One, there's nothing on political party financing. We know that what goes on during this period actually becomes the foundation for why people in particular positions begin to find ways and means of scheming to get money back, because they spent a lot in the political campaign. Three things ought to happen. Some legislation on ceilings for such campaigns, on reporting of the political party fund. We have something in the Electoral Commission.
And what's the next one for you? What's the next one apart from political party finance? I'll give you two, then we can wrap up.
Asset declaration is missing. Strengthening the asset declaration system is missing. Witness protection, strengthening witness protection is missing. Funding for the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan that is missing.
And they'll tell you they can't put everything in the manifesto. I'm sure that is the answer that Sammy James is going to give you.
No, but these are the key things. If we don't see them, then as anti-corruption activists. And the last one, which is key, is we need a new constitution. We need to go Kenya's way, get a new constitution that cuts down executive influence and power on all parts of our country. That thing of appointing every board chair, this, that is why we are not getting meritocracy, and is rather potential nepotism and other things.
I'll leave it here for now. Thank you so much for your time. Some key issues that he raises. Quickly, let me just bring in 2 or 3 questions from the public also. They've been waiting for this opportunity. It's about them. Let's bring them in. So this is on Facebook. How much will the free universal healthcare cost the country? I'm asking because various governments signed the Abuja Declaration that promised that at least 15% of national budget will be spent on health, but they never fulfilled it. What shows the NDC will do something different? Benson, that's your question. Thank you. So we'll stay on Facebook. It looks like the NDC is promising more than the NPP. I know they will come back and give us stories. I want Sammy JP to tell us what we should do to them if they fail to fulfill the promise. So that's the long and short of it. And that's a question. And then on WhatsApp, Kwame Delali says this 2020 NDC manifesto is loaded with good promises. But my question about job creation is which sectors will these jobs be created in, and what kind of jobs are we talking about here? That question has been answered. And Eric Asante says Uganda loses about 10 people daily to motorbike accidents, costing about $1.2 billion annually, which represent about 5% of the gross domestic product. They have legalized commercialization of motorbike known as boda boda. Why is the NDC trying to do this to us? Even Rwanda, which is good with implementation, is having problems. I want to talk about lawless Ghana. Eric Asante's question on Okada. And we're squeezing this one from Henry. NDC built so-called affordable houses, and till now, no one lives in them. The houses look like only the bourgeoisie can afford. What is the difference in this manifesto about housing? So most of the questions you've answered. Adam Senanu, quickly, 1 minute, and then we can talk about Big Push and then the pension scheme. I'm very interested in that.
Okay, so with the governance issues our brother raised, some are ideological issues that we don't necessarily
political party
agree,
financing.
And like I said, it's not everything that you can capture in your manifesto, because you're also taking into consideration brevity and all that. Now, on asset declaration, President Mahama has stated publicly, in fact, it was at the outdooring of our running mate, Professor Nana Jenu-Kukwejiman, when he made a point that his appointees will file or publish their assets so declared publicly under the next NDC government. And that is that is huge, because currently we don't have that legal regime. Yes, public officers are required to publish, declare their assets. They do so, it goes to the Auditor General, but it becomes a closed book, confidential. Now, to deepen transparency and accountability, President Mahama is saying that if you want to serve in the next NDC government, then you should be prepared to publish your assets so declared. So we have an alternative on that.
$10 billion accelerated infrastructural plan. That's the big push. Let's talk about it quickly.
That is something we have done before. Between 2013 and 2016, President Mahama invested as much as $6 billion out of the 80 billion Ghana cedis he borrowed. Invested about 36 billion of that into infrastructural development. That is what led to the hospitals, the schools, the road projects, the interchanges that you see all across the country. This time around, he wants us to rapidly close the infrastructural deficit or gap confronting the nation by ensuring that we invest $10 billion in accelerated infrastructure development over a period of 4 or 5 years. Build or complete the Eastern Corridor Road, commence the Western Corridor Road, dualize roads like Tema to Ho, Tema to Aflao, Accra, Winneba, Cape Coast, Takoradi, Accra, Kumasi. We started, but we couldn't finish. Complete road projects like that. Make sure that the people of Mankasim, Aflao, Nima, Techiman get KJTR-like small markets. Make sure that all regional hospitals are converted into teaching hospitals. All district regional hospitals are provided with hospitals. Build more schools and infrastructure ensure that we achieve that development and transformation we're talking about.
Government has talked about, we've heard the president announce that they're building such hospitals at least.
This government will go down as the only government in Ghana's history which hasn't built a single district hospital and a single secondary school.
Despite of the 88
despite having had access to unprecedented, an unprecedented resource envelope of 374 billion. President Mahama in his 4 years had just 193 billion. We can show you the schools, the hospitals, the roads, the markets he built with just that. They have had 374 billion and they cannot boast of one district hospital they have built, despite promising one district, one hospital. They cannot boast of one secondary school they have built, despite promising to build 350 secondary schools from scratch in 18 months. This Agenda 88, now 10 Agenda 111 promise has turned out to be another scam because he has deferred its implementation to 2021. Ghanaians are not ready.
Unfortunately, Mr. Samijinfi, that's all time will allow me for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And as the People's Manifesto will continue to take a look at it, your questions will be answered. And they're talking about a town hall. But at this point, that's it for tonight's edition of The Lockdown. And to my siblings who are going to start writing their BEC from tomorrow, we wish you the best of luck. And we hope to see you again on Sunday for another edition of The Lockdown. I am MFR. On behalf of the entire team, we say thank you for being a part of tonight's edition. Have a good evening.